Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, good evening to you.
Good evening, man. How you doing?
I'm all right. I just sort of wolfed down a sandwich and I made a gin the size of my head. So I feel like I'm ready now.
Listen, it's the classic preparation. Sandwich and a vase full of gin.
Yeah, that was the thing. I had to find a really, really big container for the gin the size of my head. Just a regular glass wouldn't do. So Lana has a bucket out the back garden that she drinks water out of. I had to just empty that out. Sorry, Lana. No water for you today. I need gin after that. And I feel like I need gin after that. How do you feel?
I feel, I don't know, actually. I mean, obviously, I was delighted. This is part of the disadvantage of sort of doing a podcast so soon after the game, which is down to my filming schedule. So apologies for that. But
only idiots would do that by choice, you know?
I know. But but honestly, like, well, maybe we're idiots, but I wouldn't do it by choice because it's not. I don't always know quite where I stand, and I did have a feeling coming out of the game. Whether I'll still feel that way tomorrow morning by the time we normally record, I don't know.
Well,
but yeah, I feel a bit sort of. I'd feel a bit frustrated, which is odd because we scored a 93rd minute equaliser against a very good team. And it was a brilliant goal. And, you know, that's great.
Yeah.
And I was delighted, don't get me wrong, when it hit the net. But I think I'd sort of spent, like, the previous 93 minutes being a bit mardy, basically. I really, really didn't like that starting lineup. I really didn't like it.
I got a message from Andrew Allen, by the way, who said... I hated the whole game. I presume he liked the bit where we scored.
Yeah.
But I get the sense, and I get the sense just, you know, from seeing some of the reaction. I don't mean the most extreme reaction, but the volume of conversation around this game on Arseblog, on Arseblog News is significant. It's really, really high, and people are feeling stuff. So whether they feel frustrated, whether they feel a weird mix of happy because we did get that goal and what a great goal it was, but the sense that maybe we left something on the table with the starting lineup, which is what you're alluding to, or not alluding to, you're pretty straightforward about what you said there, I think is pretty common in a lot of the discourse that I have seen.
Yeah. I also have got to say, by the way, this was the site of one of the most surreal football live experiences I've ever had, where on the screen above me in the North Bank of the Emirates Stadium for the vast majority of the first half, certainly for about 20 minutes the first half, they were showing the BBC daytime property programme Escape to the Country.
Why? What do they normally show the game on that screen?
They show replays and stuff.
Right. So
it was on in the concourses as well. It was so surreal because I nipped out like a couple of minutes before half time to get a pint, and which is the largest drink size they do. There's no buckets, sadly. No head size beverages. But it was also on there. And like it was surreal watching fans sort of queue up to get a beer, trying to find out if this couple were going to go for house number 1, house number 2, or house number 3. The reason it was on, I mean, it was very funny. A guy in my block was so annoyed by it, he climbed up on top of the seats to turn the televisions off.
I know why it was on, because the Arsenal women were on BBC One this afternoon. Exactly. So they were showing their game, and obviously someone put the remote control down and couldn't find it.
Basically, so yes. So during the first half, they were showing Arsenal women on the screens in the stands, as far as I could see, which is I think quite a noble intention, but actually quite when you're watching a game and you sort of want to see a replay of something, is a little bit frustrating. And then when that game ended 0-0, BBC programming continued on its course. And I'd occasionally look up, being like, oh, I wonder how close that chance was, or it looked like a good save. Let's see that again.
Well, you think I'm going to buy this cottage in Somerset?
Basically, yeah, it's just two people going around bedrooms being like, it's a bit small, not enough storage space. You know what I mean? So that was so weird that it slightly spammed me out. But yeah, I don't know, man.
Well, come on, let's bring it back around then to the starting lineup and the team that Mikel Arteta selected for this game, because I do think, in fact,
it's going to be a talking point, isn't it?
I know for a fact that this is the root of so much of the discussion around this game today. First half versus second half, Arsenal at home. What sort of a lineup are you going to pick? We don't have Martin Odegaard. How do you replace Martin Odegaard? What are your options to replace Martin Odegaard? And I think he went with the safest possible decision that he could make, the most cautious. And listen, Mikel Merino is probably going to come in for quite a bit of flack. There was a moment, wasn't there, where he was caught on the ball just outside our box, and reindeer guy, Reinders, he got a shot off and David Raya made the save. But what I think is quite interesting, I thought, and people might kill me for this, I thought Merino was actually quite good in that first half, but he was the wrong...
Is this what took Arseblog News down?
I didn't say no.
The player ratings. I think that's fair. I don't disagree with that.
I think he was fine, but he was the wrong player for this game. So
yeah, I mean, listen. Maybe he was the wrong player. Maybe he wasn't. I think everyone will have their opinion on that. For me. Yeah, like I said, I didn't love the lineup. I mean, the Merino one was part of it, certainly. I didn't really understand why Eze wasn't playing. I know he didn't have a great game in Bilbao, but I thought he should have been in somewhere. I was a little bit surprised about Trossard, and I'm someone who rates Trossard and thinks he gets a hard time off people. I think he's got a lot of qualities and he delivers. And again, I wouldn't say... I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I wouldn't say he played particularly poorly or anything like it. But yeah, I thought he would probably have been the third of the three options in my mind for that left wing position. But the midfield thing, the Merino one, yeah, I'm not. I don't. It depends what your football philosophy and tastes are, I think. But I'm never going to look at Zubimendi, Rice, Merino and feel
excited,
massively enthused.
No,
yeah.
Me too. I'm the same. I think, what's been interesting is in the games when Martin Odegaard has had to go off with injury against Leeds and against Nottingham Forest, Mikel Arteta immediately put Ethan Nwaneri on. And my thing...
But are Leeds and Nottingham Forest the sort of key part of that?
Potentially. But, my personal preference would be to see somebody more like Martin Odegaard in the Martin Odegaard position. And I think Mikel Merino has got fine qualities. He's a great team player, but creativity is certainly not one of those qualities necessarily, or that people would say he's not really a creative midfielder, although I do think he played some very interesting passes today. But ultimately, is he the guy with the craft? Is he the guy with the guile? No, he's not. He can do things for this team, but he's not. He's not going to do what an Odegaard can do. He's not going to do what maybe Ethan Nwaneri can do. He's certainly not going to do what Eberechi Eze did when he was in that position. So
yeah, and I think that's sort of the thing, isn't it? I mean, I think if you had those reservations or you had those concerns, the outcome and the equaliser and how it came about are sort of going to confirm those. It's a nice day to sort of have the satisfaction of nicking the point and also being able to say, aha, I told you so. And, you know, I get that will probably annoy some people, but it's not about Mourinho being a bad player or anything like it. He's a very, very good player who's got a lot of uses and functions, and we talked about that just the other day. But it's who he's replacing, and it's how far away he is stylistically. And it's not even to say he hasn't got technical ability. He can. His close control can be really good. Like you say, he picks out some nice passes. But is his instinct, is his nature to create? And I'm talking about the sort of psychological component of it almost. Like, is that who he is fundamentally? No, it's not. And, you know, he's kind of he's probably closer to a Declan Rice, really, in terms of the way he sort of, you know, gets about the pitch, and it can be very physical and monster people at times. So, yeah, This was my big feeling. I feel that starting lineups, any selection, sends a message. And I told this anecdote on my YouTube video, but I will tell it again.
Okay.
I do think
I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. So.
Well, then you are in for a treat, mate.
Okay.
Let me tell you. So at half-time, you know, we're all out in the concourse. Everyone's having a pint. There's a sort of gallows humour around. We've just watched 20 minutes of Escape to the Country. You know, people are sort of like, this isn't going great. You know, this is quite hard work, and City sitting in. How did we concede that goal? The usual gripes, you know, what subs would you make? Well, I hope we see Eze, hope we see Saka, hope it's not too late. Everyone's finishing their drinks. And anyone who watches an Emirates Stadium game on telly will know or be familiar with the idea that sometimes people aren't out for the second half straight away because they've got a pint, quite an expensive pint to fill. And by this point, you know, 2 minutes before the game recommenced, Escape to the Country, fortunately, had been turned over. And
what was on? Bergerac?
Yeah. Yeah, Countdown was on. And no, we had the Sky coverage. Unfortunately, without audio. I gather that was another irritation for people today. You can tell me about that in a minute. But obviously the cameras showed the figures of Eze and Saka stripped off and ready to come on, right, in their kit. I have never seen, at the start of a second half, an urgency for people to get back out into the stands like I saw today in that stadium.
People just fucking sculling their pints.
Mate, leaving their pints. And I'm not even kidding.
Wow.
Right? Like, it was a cue to get out of the concourse when people saw those two players coming on. And this was in, I promise you, was my experience. I was in Block 6, North Bank, lower tier. People were desperate to get out there, see those guys get on the pitch and see them hopefully change the game. And I do think that selections set a tone and send a message. And the introduction of those players absolutely did that. And credit to the manager for making those changes as early as he did and seeing that there was an issue. But for me, whenever a manager makes two changes at half time, for me, it's an admission that they got something wrong.
Yeah.
I know Madueke seemingly had an injury.
He did, he said he got something early on.
But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. Like, honestly, people had been so flat and so sardonic and so, here we go again, feels like last season, everything's going wrong. You brought those two players on and the belief that it instilled in that stadium was visible.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, this is kind of what my immediate post-game reaction on Blue Sky was, that the nature of the second half performance leaves me with a lot of regret. Like, I don't think you can dominate Manchester City like that for 90 minutes. City, you know, had a goal. They had something to protect, so it's a different kind of game. But I do think what we did in the second half and the players that we had on the pitch and the way we looked to play, even if it wasn't necessarily we weren't making chance after chance after chance, but it was a lot better than the first half. For me, is a sort of a big regret, because I feel like at home, like I sort of get it. If you go to Anfield, I get it more.
Or Bilbao.
Or even Bilbao to an extent, because there was a level of occasion to that game. And that stadium, I spoke about this on the Arsecast on Thursday, but that stadium was loud, and there was a big atmosphere, and those fans were, right up for it. So there was that to contend with. An away game in Europe, you take nothing for granted. But at home, I really feel like we need to be braver. And I'm sort of curious as to what you think about Arteta's mindset, in as much as any of us can truly understand what goes on in that man's head, right? And I mean that, respectfully, because, I feel like there's a lot going on in that man's head. He thinks a lot, right? Mm. But the record against the so-called Big Six over the last couple of seasons, where we haven't lost a game, until we played Liverpool for so long. And much of that was predicated on being really, really hard to beat. Is that just fundamental to Arteta's approach to what people might perceive as, in inverted commas, big games?
Yeah, I think it is. And listen, a lot of people will say he's not wrong in that. Like, a lot of people will say he's made us solid and difficult to beat. And, a few years ago, if City had got that opening goal against us, they might have blown us away. Yeah. They might have run away with it. And they're right. Like, there is merit to a lot of what he's done, and there is merit to the structure he brings. I can only speak sort of as a fan, saying that, like, I can't help but sort of yearn for him to coin the phrase, take the handbrake off of it.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I think you can develop and you can become really hard to beat. And I think, something I wrote on the blog a couple of weeks ago was, listen, we have this amazing defensive platform. We've got brilliant defenders. We've got great defensive midfielders, and we've invested a lot in attacking players. And I think that is the prevailing sense, certainly from a lot of the discussions I've seen and from the comments I've seen and from the way people are talking, is that, okay, we've done this. We've become really tough to beat. We are really hard to beat. There was like one moment, like a split-second decision in this game that sent it Manchester City's way for most of the 90 minutes, right? We'll come to that in a second. But when something becomes normal, it's not that you crave something different, but I think there is a sense, right, that we are inherently just a little bit too cautious as a team at times. And I think it's right to show respect to the opposition, particularly big teams, particularly a team that's won the Premier League 4 years in a row with maybe the best, most successful manager in football history at the helm, right? You'd be stupid to just say, right, let's go fucking hell for leather here. We'll start, let's put Saka at left back, Madueke at right back, get all the forwards. Nobody's asking for that, right? Nobody's asking for that. But I think there is a sense that, at home against a City team that maybe aren't quite the City team of old, as you say, send a bit of a message with your team selection. So when Martin Odegaard is not injured, you don't play the safe card, you play the Joker. And that's not to be pejorative about anybody. It's like, look at what we did in the second half and look at how well Eberechi Eze played in the second half in that position. People are asking, well, can he play there? We had a discussion on the preview podcast, like, can you move Declan Rice over to the right and play Eze as the left 8, which is kind of where he's played a lot for Crystal Palace, right? But he can play there. He can play the Odegaard position.
That's one of the things I think that's interesting about it, because if you look back over the summer, a lot of the reporting that we did and that I think others did as well was that Arsenal, there was talk of they see Eze more as a central player really than a winger, than a pure winger. And now I find it interesting and slightly odd that it's taken until half time today for us to really see that.
Do you think it's a reactive decision? Do you think it's a reaction to the first half to play Eze there? Like, his hand was forced with Madueke, who went off at halftime, so he's going to bring Saka on. I think if Madueke hadn't had a problem, he probably would have stayed on. So maybe you wouldn't have the impact of the double change, which really sends a message. But do you think that was maybe something he was considering before the game? Like, will I play Eze there, or will I play Mikel Merino, or will I play Eze on the left?
Yeah.
Or do you think it was it
felt like
the context of the game forced his hand in a way?
Yeah. And maybe it wasn't quite the game he anticipated. Maybe City were, deeper than he expected them to be. Maybe they were sitting off more than he expected, and he thought we're going to have more of the ball than I anticipated, and therefore we need Eze. We were behind as well. That's the thing. Game state informed it, right? We were chasing. So, and that's the thing. Like, if you are like me, someone who does harbour that sort of slight concern that Arteta doesn't always take the risks that you might like to see, actually, the second half is a great example of him doing just that. It's not just the halftime changes, it's the changes that followed. There was a point during that second half where I was like, these are like Arsene Wenger substitutions. Mm-hmm. Bringing off Timber for Martinelli with 10 minutes to go. We kind of threw the kitchen sink at it. And I couldn't tell you what the formation was. What the structure was in that last bit of the game. And so maybe it will prove to be a big day of learning for the manager.
I was going to ask you that, when we got to a certain point, but we're here now, so we might as well talk about it. I think for Arsenal, this was a very important game not to lose.
Definitely.
Right? Because, listen, you don't want to drop 3 points. Getting any point is valuable against a team like Manchester City. But I think for Mikel Arteta, I'm not saying it would have been a watershed moment, but I think, based on all the conversations, I've seen and seen people talking, and like, if he'd lost this game at home, having picked that team for the first half, I do wonder what sort of damage that might have inflicted, because that sense of frustration, it wasn't long to sort of manifest itself. Like, you can tell me, Gary Neville was like at peak Gary Neville today, by the way, on Sky.
Yeah, I'm sure.
He could not have been any more irritating. Like, the only thing was missing was him just running his fingernails down a blackboard every time he spoke, which is coincidental because that's what his voice actually sounds like as well. But he said late in the first half, like, Arsenal are flat. It's gone flat. The stadium is flat. And I hated that he said that because it was exactly what I was thinking in my head at that moment in time.
Nothing worse than that.
I was like, you fuck off. But did it feel like that in the ground where it just was like, where is the spark? Where is the spark in this team, in this performance? And, people ask questions. And I think if you produce that in a summer where you have a so-so iffy transfer window, people will say, maybe there's some mitigation. But the transfer window that Arsenal have had this summer plays a part in how people expect this team and these players to perform, right?
Mm-hmm. The consequences of having such a good transfer window is that there's nowhere really to hide. Like I have called this the no excuses season, and I think there's some truth in that. I think basically at every stage previously, we've been able to look at the squad and say, aha, well, if we just had this or we just had that. It really does feel now that the coaching staff have all the tools at their disposal. So people's expectations naturally are going to be pretty darn high. I think when you're given a load of new toys, there is probably a bit of time to adjust and get used to them and figure them out and figure out the best combinations. And I guess my hope is that that's kind of what we're seeing a little bit, is a manager getting to grips with the various players he now has at his disposal. And also, in the course of this game, he seemed to become more adventurous in his choices. So maybe it's part of an ongoing process. I mean, I have to say, I saw a quote from his post-match press conference where he was like, no one asked me about the midfield three after Bilbao. And I thought, well, he doesn't sound repentant. But it is immediately after the game.
Sure.
And in an adversarial setting.
He's slightly defensive, I think. The guy on Sky, his post-match interview on Sky, and the guy said, listen, I'm just a humble reporter.
Sure.
You know your players better than I do. But with hindsight, do you look at the first half versus the second half and think, oh, why didn't I start with that team in the first half? Or is that too simple? And he basically said, well, yeah, you said it right there. It's too simple. But, I genuinely hope that he looks at what his team produced in that second half, because, again, while we weren't making loads and loads of chances, when have you seen a team do that to Manchester City? To force Pep Guardiola, the most attacking coach ever, maybe, in terms of his philosophy at least, play five at the back, take off a forward and bring on another centre half. And play basically 5-3-2 or 5-4-1.
Well, barely a striker on the pitch.
Yeah, well, I mean, he took Holland off, So this again, I think, is probably what will cause people regret. Is like, okay, if we just done that from the start. Look, there's no guarantees, of course.
And I think Pep, again, I think Pep might have some regret. I think that they sacrificed too much threat. I think they could have hurt us more probably on the break, but I was surprised how much they kind of retreated. But then, as you say, that was something that we were doing to them as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what I would say as well is it was a tight game. It was a game without a ton of chances, and actually, historically, or certainly in recent history, that's what these Arsenal, Man City, Pep, Arteta games have been. They have had that feel of sort of someone giving you a Chinese burn for 90 minutes, and at the end, there's probably one goal in it, and it kind of could go either way. So they are quite tense watches, I think, always, because of the nature of the two coaches, and I think the way in which they approach each other. But yeah, I do keep coming back to this idea that this City isn't a City of the quality that we've seen previously. Maybe the remainder of the season will prove me wrong in that respect. But I when I looked at their lineup at kickoff, for the first time in a long time, I looked at it and thought, we should beat these. I really did think that. Maybe that was naive, but yeah, I just don't think they're what they used to be.
No, I agree with that. They're certainly in a period of transition, if that's the right way of putting it, or they're trying to play a different way. And I'm not sure it's necessarily the way Pep Guardiola ideally wants to play. So, they're not that they're there for the taking, but there is a sort of instability that's there now that wasn't with the best City teams that we've seen over the last number of years. I mean, let's talk about the goal that we conceded.
Yeah.
So I've looked at this a few times again, and it's so fascinating to me in football about how, like, a split second, as I said earlier, like a split second decision can have such a big impact on a game of football. And I think Gabriel does not need to try and win the ball there, that high up the pitch. It's sort of bouncing around. It's like a goalmouth scramble, but in the middle of midfield. And the ball sort of breaks and he goes for it and he doesn't get there. And City then just absolutely ruthlessly exploit that space that he has left, And if Gabriel, I think, just sort of stands there, even if Haaland gets the ball or whoever it is that's going for the ball gets the ball, there's a lot to do when you've got three defenders. You'd have Saliba, Gabriel and Timber, and you'd have the numbers, even if City did get it forward, to make the right defensive actions and keep yourself in the right defensive formation. But he steps up, he doesn't get there, and Haaland gets in behind, and that's 1-0. It was incredibly efficient piece of play from Man City.
Yeah, beautifully done from their perspective. I think, Ryan just looks like a really good player. Ruthlessly efficient from Haaland. It's actually a 1-2, isn't it? But he makes a 50-yard sprint. And he leaves Gabriel in the dust, to be frank. I did watch it and think, like, could Saliba have engaged Reinders? But then I guess
if he does, he's got Doku's
got Haaland, and he's got Doku the other side.
The other side. So if he goes to the ball, he has to try and play the odds and hope, like, Reinders might misplace the pass. If he commits, he can just play Doku in one side or Haaland in the other. Maybe you take the risk. Maybe that's what it is. But I do think for me, the mistake, and it's not even a big mistake. We see players make mistakes all the time. It's just the wrong decision in a split second from Gabriel.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think City did their part of it really, really well. In fact, I was chatting to a friend of the show, Tots, at half-time.
Okay.
Totti, and he was saying, he was complimenting Haaland on the fact that at no point did he think he might be offside there. Like, his timing of his runs is so immaculate. For someone who gets in behind as often as he does, very rarely do you see that flag go up. And he unfortunately played it to perfection on that one. And it was an early goal, 9 minutes.
9 minutes.
Like that. So that did, suck some of the fun out of things.
Quite. They're damaging, aren't they? Early goals, like, I think on top of maybe some of the disquiet, if that's the right way of putting it, about the lineup, about the team selection. When you concede early, it also has an impact on proceedings. Like, that midfield is about containment, right? It's about keeping the game tight. And maybe the game plan was keep it tight, get to 60 minutes. You bring on Saka, you bring on Eze, you bring on Martinelli, you bring on Waneri, whoever you want to bring on. Mm-hmm. And then you go for it. But when you concede after 9 minutes, that game plan is sort of out the window.
That's true. And I have to say, for me, the big concern actually was City are so good on the break, as they demonstrated in that moment. I really feared they would be able to pick us off if we had to chase it. And I know they had chances, one or two later in the match, but I think we deserve some credit for the fact that while we did dominate sort of long stretches of the game, particularly in the second half, we also had enough protection as well to sort of prevent them doing that. And as I say, I think as the game wore on, I think they conceded a bit too much of their attacking threat. The defensive platform we have, the defensive prowess that we have, was evident more or less
throughout this game because City didn't threaten a great deal. There was the little mistake from Marino, which led to a shot, as I mentioned earlier. Beyond that, I'm not really remembering too much threat from Manchester City. A couple of moments here or there, but defensively, we were really, really good. Apart from that moment, which obviously let them score the goal early on. At the other end, people will talk about the first half. I think as the first half went on, maybe the last 10 minutes of the first half, we started to see a little bit more from Arsenal. Just, again, not really creating massive chances, but where we were playing, that first half in particular, first half an hour anyway, it felt a lot like, oh, there's David Raya with the ball at his feet, and City are like, all set up for their press, and they let us have the ball back there because, you can't fucking score from your own goal mouth, really. But as the game went on, Madueke, I think, grew into it, and if he had a problem from early on, then fair play to him because he was maybe the most lively attacking player from an Arsenal perspective.
Yeah, I couldn't see it, that's for sure. I thought he was, a bit of a bright spot for us. Forced a decent opponent save from our old mate in goal.
That guy.
It's very disappointing. We're going to be seeing more of him. I thought he added something to City, although,
Not on the ball, but certainly from our set pieces, he was very...
And I set pieces, he definitely helped them a lot.
Gave them presence, didn't he?
He gave them presence. He got to a lot of stuff. I don't think we got about him on the ball enough. Like that was a frustration for me because he's not great and he had the odd loose touch, but I don't know. Viktor Gyokeres has many strengths. I'm not convinced that pressing is one. And I think I wanted to see us snapping at his heels a bit more than we were.
Yeah.
But there you go.
There you go. So look, halftime, 1-0 to Man City. And I'm thinking, is he going to change anything at the break? It would be...
Did you expect it?
No. I was chatting with Lewis Ambrose just briefly at the break. And he said, I don't really see us making a change for another 15, 20 minutes or so. And I was like, yeah, pretty much agree with that. And then TV cut to Eze and Saka on the bench or on the sideline. So I was like, okay, all righty, let's go. I was very pleased to see that as well, because sometimes, a player coming off at halftime can be like a post-mortem on that particular player, whereas I think this one, or these changes, one was enforced obviously with Madueke, but the Eze one was just the most obvious thing that we needed to do. When you looked at that first half, what was the problem? There was no real creativity, there was no real spark, there was no craft in our build-up play. It was all steady, it was fine. But we missed something, and the only player, or one of the only players on the bench who could come on and bring that was Eze, So I'm glad he did it. I think it is maybe, is it out of his comfort zone to make halftime changes? We don't see it that often.
We don't see it that
often. And, there have been games in the past where I've certainly been of the opinion, watching the games, that, this guy or that guy, I take him off now and put somebody else on, And it doesn't tend to happen until about 60 minutes thereabouts.
No, I think that's true. And what an incredible position to be in, to have a player of that quality on the bench to bring on. And, a big theme at the start of the season has been the depth and the contributions that players have made from the subs bench. So for all the frustration that might be out there about the starting lineup, you have to kind of doff your cap to the recruitment again in terms of the variety and the options it has brought us. So
look, immediately we were better. I think we were better. I remember Eze having a shot which was saved by Donnarumma. It just sort of broke to him on the edge of the box, and he cracked a shot. Donnarumma saved. Saka, gives you something on that right hand side. Gave City something to think about a little bit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
By virtue of his presence, and
it was interesting because last week we were talking about how are Madueke and Saka different, and this game kind of gave you a flavour of that, didn't it?
It did. There was maybe a question about that a bit later.
Okay.
There was a moment, wasn't there, when Haaland had a chance and he didn't really get his shot off very well, and Eze chased back to defend and cleared the ball off Declan Rice and over the bar.
Yes.
I think 9 times out of 10 that hits Declan Rice and ends up in the back of the net.
Yeah.
Have you seen a replay of that?
I couldn't tell what had gone on.
Yeah.
Because I was at the other end and I saw Haaland go through and, of course, feared the worst. And I couldn't figure it out because it obviously, I couldn't tell out if he'd got a rebound or a shot, gone over or something. And I had to actually go online to find out what happened there. But that was a close. That's me bragging, by the way, that I managed to get online inside the stadium. But that was a real close call.
Mm-hmm. It really was. But we were causing them not problems, but there were moments at the other end. I think Trossard had a shot. There was another. Madueke had a shot. That was the end of the first half, obviously. Yeah, so he did that. There was a moment when Trossard maybe had a shot, and then in the next action just played the ball straight across the 6-yard box. And I think it deflected off a City player and there was nobody there.
Just kind of evaded everybody.
Evaded everyone. But, it was a case that we were on top and we played the game, most of the game, in their half. Mm-hmm. City went to a back 5. We brought on Martinelli for Timber, as you say. We brought on Waneri he came on for Trossard, I think. Mm-hmm. So he got more or less as much attacking talent onto the pitch as he possibly could for the last 10, 15 minutes of the game. Again, maybe you could do it a bit sooner, but you run the risk of being completely imbalanced with quite a lot of the game to play, I guess, when you've taken a right back off and everything else. But what about the goal?
What about it? I mean, it's a special goal.
Listen, Gabriel Martinelli has had some critics in the last few weeks. Over this summer, I think it's fair to say. He has come in for criticism, which I think we talked about last week or the week before, both him and Trossard, which was probably a little over the top. And I'm delighted for him that this week he has, gone some way to silencing some of the doubters and has done it in a way that maybe people wouldn't have expected. Because I think where people get critical of Martinelli are things like his touch, his first touch. Does he really make the most of opportunities that he gets given? The goal against Bilbao, like the first touch is okay. The second touch is absolutely sensational to put him through on goal. The finish, who cares? It's in the back of the net. For this goal, the run is brilliant. The pass from Eze is absolutely superb as well to spot it. But the first touch for this goal is just impeccable. Could not be any better. Could not be any better. Just gets it away from him to the point where he can then dink it over the goalkeeper. And that's not an easy thing to do at the pace he's running at, by the way. He's basically at top speed, trying to hold off a defender, take a first touch from a ball that's dropping from the sky, and then dink it over the goalkeeper, like a gigantic goalkeeper, by the way, not just a regular David Raya-sized goalkeeper, an enormous goalkeeper. And I think it's a brilliant, 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 brilliant goal. And I'm very, very happy for him because ultimately, if all of our players are producing, we have a better chance of doing what we want to do this season. And I think he needs a lot of credit. Came off the bench in midweek, could potentially have started this game, as you said. you weren't mad for the Trossard selection. If it wasn't going to be Eze, it could easily have been Martinelli from the start. When he came on, I was a bit like, oh, is this the game that Martinelli could blow open? Because where you want him is running into space, and there isn't any space because City are playing with a back five, basically. So I think massive credit to him for that goal. It's a brilliant, brilliant touch and a brilliant finish.
And can I just make the point? There is space if you change how you build up.
Mm-hmm.
If you are prepared to play in a more direct fashion, as Eze does in this case, literally taking the ball off, I think it might be Calafiori or one of the centre halves, almost in the number 6 position, and then immediately looking over the top for the running behind, then there is space.
Mm-hmm.
And then a player like Martinelli, or maybe Viktor Gyokeres, can really profit. But if you are going to build up in a way which is a bit more painstaking, like you said, that triangle of Raya, Saliba, Gabriel, attempting to draw the press, then by the time you get into the final third, you're going to have a Gabriel Martinelli receiving the ball in a position where he might be doubled up upon. Certainly, he's probably going to be in a crowded environment. He's going to have to beat a man with his dribbling, 1v1, which has not been a strong suit of his game recently.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what Bilbao and what today show is that if you mix it up and you add that variety to your game and you are prepared to be a bit more direct, then he can be a threat. Running in behind, he is still one of the best we have. He's very quick. People do not realise how quick Gabriel Martinelli is, and his numbers on the training ground back that up. He is very, very quick, and his timing is good. But you've got to look for him.
Yeah. I mean,
and I'm not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes and say, oh, he's been brilliant for the last 12 months. You know what I mean? I totally see all the issues that he's had, and if there'd been a really good offer in the summer, I would have been very tempted to take it. But I just think there is a player there. We just need to be realistic about what he is and what he isn't.
I agree, and I do wonder if this week has told us maybe something about where you get more out of Gabriel Martinelli.
And when, maybe?
Yeah, maybe so.
I mean, that might be the trouble for him. Is he falling into the Trossard trap of proving himself to be an outstanding super sub,
Potentially, but maybe there's something to be said for, okay, we've got an EFL Cup game on Wednesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you start Gabriel Martinelli up front?
The real reason Marino came off is he's being rested for that one.
But genuinely, is it not worth that little bit of an experiment, albeit against a team who are, a few divisions down? Is it not worth that experiment? If you've got that kind of direct running, low touch centre forward in Gyokeres, is it not worth giving it a crack with Martinelli? Because ultimately the 2 goals that he has scored this week have been him running right down the fucking centre of the pitch, or making a run right down the centre of the pitch.
That's fair.
Yeah.
You could call them, you could call them Gyokeres goals. I reckon if you went back and watched his Sporting goals, you'd probably find 1 or 2 in there similar.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would be very open to that. But yeah, I mean, massive credit to both players because technically what they accomplished in that goal is extremely difficult. I mean, you can question Donnarumma's decision to come, and he ultimately is made to look silly by the finish. But I really do think what you've got there is a 6'6" goalkeeper saying, if you're going to beat me, you're going to have to produce something extraordinary.
Yeah,
and Martinelli does.
Yeah, absolutely. Watching it on TV, there was, I sort of knew it was going in, but it went in so slowly.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking, is someone going to get back to it?
Yeah, exactly. I was like,
But it was just too beautifully done. It reminded me actually a little bit of very different finish, but Kevin De Bruyne of City lobbing Aaron Ramsdale. Do you remember when Takiro Tomiyasu was dispossessed?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, beautifully clipped it over him, and just, it's lovely to see an opposition goalkeeper looking quite that stranded. So, fantastic goal. And listen, he's proving... I think proving people wrong is maybe even too strong, because I think a lot of the discussion about Martinelli has merit. And, I don't think he's been at his best, and I don't think we've been doing the best to get the best out of him. Mm-hmm. But he's showing he still has a massive role to play and value in this squad. And I'm not sure everyone necessarily believed that. Across the course of the summer.
Well, when you produce things like that, isn't it funny how, like, the minute the goal went in, the game completely changed. The dynamic of the game completely. Just City were like, hey, we can play football too.
Yeah, this is what I mean. I really do think they, and I suppose this shows that I'm consistent in my sort of wanting teams to be ambitious, maybe. But I feel like they did go too much into their shell.
Yeah. Pep was talking on TV afterwards. Why is he, by the way, you probably won't have seen this, but you will have seen it at other games. Why is it every time the camera turns to Pep Guardiola, it looks like he's spitting something out of his mouth? What is that? He was at it again today. He's like, it's just really, really weird. Anyway, he was complaining about, or saying that the team were tired because they had a Champions League game on Thursday, which I guess is fair enough, but they played against 10 men for most of that game, so it wasn't the most exhausting game they were going to play. But, the comment that I wanted to make was that in that second half, Man City played like we did last season at their place, but we had 10 men.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what to read into that, to be honest. Maybe it was just Pep saying, we can defend. Arsenal aren't good enough to break us down. I have, confidence in my defenders, etc., etc. Or was it Guardiola saying, well, actually, I'm slightly afraid of this Arsenal team. Look who they brought off the bench. They've brought on Eze. They've brought on Saka. They've brought on Martinelli. I don't know. I don't quite know what to read into it, but I do feel like if Arsenal had played that way, there would be quite a lot of discussion about it. Maybe winning a load of trophies gives you some grace in that sense, though.
I think it does.
Yeah.
I've said it many times. I think when you win, the narrative changes. But yes, a lot of people have messaged me saying they didn't understand sort of City getting a sort of free pass from TV coverage for the way they set up and played after getting that lead. Parallels were drawn with the criticism of us, not last season, but the season before when we drew at the Etihad. I suppose, obviously, the difference this time was they had a lead to protect.
Yeah.
But I was still surprised by the degree to which they did that. I mean, they nearly executed perfectly. If Haaland puts that second one away, and there's probably no way back. But,
no.
They're a curious team to get a handle on. They still have great players. There's no doubt that Donnarumma, Rodri, Haaland, it's some spine, and around that there's flair and ability, and but they just seem to have lost half a step, and it would have been really big for them to win today, and it would have been, as you say, massive for us to lose. I think it would have been. I think it would have made the conversations pretty dark. And I think we've got a really hard game in the league next week. I know Newcastle are another team who've maybe aren't quite where they were, certainly towards the end of last season, but that's a really hard game. And going there off the back of a defeat, Yeah, I didn't like the sound of that at all.
No, me neither. But look, can we round off part one with at least, God, I want to say like a semi-positive note, because listen, a draw.
Yeah.
I think that the one thing maybe we haven't said about today is that the team really kept going and showed character. And look, it's one of those things that's intangible. If you don't get the goal, you don't have any character. If you score a goal, you've got bags of character and mental strength and all that kind of stuff. But, I think players know, right? Players know the game they're in. I think probably the Arsenal players knew this was not a game that we were likely to win, given the situation we found ourselves in, and that even getting one goal against a team like City, playing the way they were, was going to be really, really tough. Really tough. So to dig in, to find the quality that we did in the final minutes, to find the pass, to get the goal, I think, they do deserve a lot of credit for that. Whatever concerns we might have about the team selection, the players who played in that game, whether they played 90 minutes plus or 45 minutes or whatever it was, or 11, 12, 15 minutes, whatever Gabriel Martinelli got, they all gave it their all. It was fascinating actually to watch Martinelli on Sky afterwards. Maybe they got him like just the second after the players came off the pitch. I'm not 100% sure what the process is for those post-game interviews. I do think they happen pretty quickly. But I was watching the interview, and he was like, it sounded like he'd played 90 minutes plus extra time, and that's how much effort they put in to get something from this game, and I think they deserve the props for that. Losing would have been not unthinkable, but I think it would have been really, really damaging. I think the players knew that too, and they dug deep to get something, and that's worth highlighting.
Yeah, and listen, it's not a bad result. Like, it's a game you want to win because it's a home game, and you're aiming for the title. But when you rescue a point from the precipice of none, you got to be happy with that. And maybe those moments can be really galvanising and positive. I mean, Liverpool have shown, haven't they, this season, that they've really got that knack of the late goal. So us kind of flexing that muscle and demonstrating a capacity to do the same thing could be really valuable. And I think maybe we'll only know its value in time.
Yeah.
Next time we're in that position where we are chasing, we're pressing for an equaliser or a winner, whatever it might be, the belief that this moment will instill in us could be really important. So, and I think tactically there are big lessons as well. We've spoken about that a lot already, but I think that there's a lot that Mikel Arteta and his staff will take from this game. So, yeah, thank goodness that we got that goal.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, let's take a little break here. We will come back with your questions and more in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer the questions that you sent to us on Blue Sky, at gunnerblog.bsky.social and at arseblog.com. Also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. What about this for a good question to start, James? Comes from Dick Byrne. He says, so what... This is just a good Irish name. Stop it.
Okay.
He said, so what house did the couple choose?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to catch up with the highlights, I guess.
Match of the property moved to the country.
House of the day or whatever.
What's it called?
I don't know. It was very funny, actually, because when the screen eventually changed, from a property program to the game at hand, I was in the concourse. And there was a sort of, little cheer like that. and I sort of quietly said, I was watching that. And about 2 strangers within earshot laughed. And that was honestly the best moment of my day. You know, like when you make a stranger laugh in a theatrical or stage setting.
Sure.
Nothing better.
Sure.
I'm still buzzing off that.
All right. Okay. Well, look, no wonder you're in such good form.
Yeah. Thanks those guys, whoever.
Whoever you were.
Whoever you were, you made my day.
Whoever you were. Maybe they're listening. You never know.
Yeah, that's true. They probably are. Yeah. I mean, maybe it was just sort of pity. Who knows? So go on, hit me with a question.
Okay, here's a question. I know we sort of talked about this, but Thorvald on the Discord says, was this the end of the Rice, Marino and Zubimendi midfield?
Well, Andrew, please tell the listeners what you said to me just before we started recording part 2.
I was sitting here. I was waiting for you to come back.
Yeah.
And I was going, oh, yeah, Port Vale. And then, Newcastle away. I was like,
Feels kind of like a Rice
Zubimendi Marino midfield against Newcastle away would not surprise me one bit. Like, I hope obviously that it's Martin Odegaard in there, so we don't have to have any kind of discussion about it. But if it's not, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Away from home against a team like Newcastle, I don't know. Yeah. What do you think?
I think Port Vale seem like a physical opponent. We need Rice, Marino, and Zubimendi on Wednesday night as well. No, I think, Newcastle, I as soon as you said it, I thought of Bruno and Jolinton and thought, oh, Christ, yeah, it'd probably be the same. But as we said in part 1, it is easier to get your head around in an away game, I think. Particularly that away game. But
also, like, do you remember a couple of years ago when we went to Newcastle? I think we won 2-0. And Mikel Arteta was asked about, the sort of physical intensity of Newcastle, the way they play, the way they sort of sucker you in and then get you with an elbow to the back of the head. Some kind of wrestling move like Joe Linton, suplex or something like that, right? All the things that they're allowed to do that nobody else is allowed to do. And he said, you know what? Sometimes you just have to accept that you cannot match them, beat for beat or physically, right? So you got to do things a little bit differently. And he played Jorginho in that game.
Jorginho, yeah, we won 2-0.
We won 2-0, right? So, this is still something that is within his wheelhouse, or should be anyway, going to Newcastle. So, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting that. Because I did find myself thinking of City, like, there's a lot of talk of, like, they've gone very physical, like Arsenal, Donnarumma, Haaland, Rodri, the centre-halves, they're all big units, but they also pack a lot of technical ability into that team. I mean, I was struck by the contrast in the midfield threes, City having Bernardo and Reinders in there, with Foden coming off the flank too. There's a balance to be struck for sure, and I'll be very intrigued to see. Hopefully Odegaard's back, and that I do think just kind of takes that issue out of the equation a little bit, but we shall see.
Yeah, I hope for home games, unless we're absolutely, unable to field any midfield that's different, that he does recognize that there are, I don't know, more exciting, more effective. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it. I mean, he when he thinks about his players and he thinks about his team, he picked a team today that he thought, obviously, could win the game.
Oh, yeah, he likes winning.
It's not a case that...
Definitely the aim.
Do you think he hates losing more than he likes winning, particularly against Pep Guardiola?
I think maybe yes.
I think he hates losing to Pep. I really do, and I think he's had some chastening experiences against Man City. So, and anyway, I'm not excusing it or anything like that, but I do try and understand the mindset.
Wenger?
Yes, of course.
Anytime. We are made up of those who love to win and those who hate to lose. But there is a dominance in all of us. Those that hate to lose are more defenders. Those that love to win tend to be creative.
That's a great quote.
It's talking about players and like their ultimate position on the pitch. Yes, those who hate to lose are more defenders. Those that love to win tend to be creative. Through that prism.
It's sort of relevant to your job, though, isn't it? As a defender, it's about you're basically football Gandalf. You shall not pass.
Exactly.
And then you need some fucking hobbits up the other end to score some goals.
Whereas as a striker, you're sort of. I'm going to leave this. I'm going to set the Lord of the Rings thing to one side.
Thanks.
But you're sort of playing. I don't know if there's more ego in it, but you're playing for those moments, aren't you? You really are. Well, here's a question that I feel like is relevant. I just thought was really interesting and a nice observation. Shatner's bassoon on the Discord. Evening, lads. I personally don't buy the idea that Arteta sets his teams up in a cautious or negative way. However, I do think that managers, especially when they've been in charge for a long time, sometimes make decisions to prove they are right as much as to win games. And then he says, I'm sure this is unconscious. I think we've seen it with Wenger and Pep more recently. Does the midfield selection today suggest Mikel is falling into that pattern too?
But what is he right about? That a midfield like today's is good enough to win a game against Man City? I don't know that he necessarily thinks that way.
No, I don't think. I mean, as I say, his answer in the press conference sort of, I don't want to put too much stock in that, but that kind of suggests that there may be an element of that. But I don't think he's kind of entrenched in this. This isn't even his first choice midfield, Like, with everything at his disposal, I don't think he's picking Martin Odegaard, isn't he? So
yeah.
I don't think this is kind of has gone on long enough for us to be able to say he's fighting a crusade on this, I
agree.
He's going to die on this hill. But I do think there's certainly something to that observation that managers, they do sometimes, without knowing it, it seems, pick some odd hills to die on.
It's about adaptability and variance, maybe, or or how open you are to doing things in a different way.
Well, I think as well, the job requires a certain amount of ego, but there's also, you have to be self-aware enough to say, you know what, guys, players, staff, I was wrong. And that's difficult. It's difficult for any human being, but it's very difficult in a position where you're being paid millions of pounds to be right and you have to retain everyone's respect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the sort of difficult aspect of that is if he turns around and says, I got that wrong today, he's essentially, saying about Mikel Merino, he can't do this.
That's true.
You know what I mean? So he has to protect his players. So I think, trying to get to the bottom of his decision-making, what a manager says publicly, isn't always the best bellwether of what they're actually thinking. As you said in part one, maybe the halftime change or halftime changes were the evidence we need that he said, okay, that didn't work. That wasn't good enough. We need something different. Let's do it. And we've got the ability to do that now with these players on the bench. So
very possible.
Yeah. Okay, we had some questions about Big Vic.
Every week.
Queen Gunner on Blue Sky at sofire.bsky.social says, I know it's early and maybe it's because I'm annoyed with the draw, but do we need to talk about Viktor? He had some really bad touches in the box in front of us. I know you can't compare him to Holland, but the difference in quality was stark. And we had one on the Discord as well. Let me have a look. Boston folks say Saka. He said, gentlemen, Gyokeres not getting himself in good positions or not getting good service. Discuss.
This feels like a trap. Feels like I might have an opinion.
Pick right or else.
Yeah. So, first thing I'd say is these are hard games for strikers. Like, we are judging Gyokeres at this early stage, partly on games against Liverpool, Old Trafford, against Man City. We have seen games between Arsenal and Man City in the last 2 or 3 years in which Erling Haaland has not had a kick.
Mm-hmm.
So these are highly tactical, strategic affairs, relatively few chances, relatively little space. And so I think that's really important context to consider when analysing, certainly his performance today. So now I've made that good point, I'll knock the ball back over the net to you to return.
All right. So you're leaving me with the good positions or not getting good service.
Yeah, I guess so.
Right. Here's what I think. It's probably both. I think he's a very willing runner. Is that fair to say? Like, there's no lack of effort on his part.
Trying his best, I think, was Mikel Arteta's, I thought, absolutely damning quote in his post-match press conference.
Hey, we just said you can't.
That's like what they would say about me if I played. He's trying his best.
Oh, his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about this couple who were buying a cottage in Somerset.
I've not seen. Yeah, exactly. To be fair, I've not seen the video. I just saw a tweet that said that.
Yeah,
I'll read you the full quote.
Go on.
Mikel Arteta on Gyokeres' performance. There were a lot of very good balls in the box. Especially, I remember 3 of them that he was very, very close to doing against City. I imagine he means to getting on the end of. To have very big open chances is extremely difficult. Well, I agree with you, Mikel. But he's certainly trying his best and trying to do that, and we have to provide more for him. That's it. There were a lot of situations where the chances were there, and then the final pass was missing today. In many moments, it was very, very open. So that's interesting. That seems like a bit of a contradiction in some respects.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't at all open, I don't think. And that quote you read out with more context does not sound like, he's trying his best. Poor lad. No. Poor fella.
I'm sure someone has clipped that up or extracted that particular quote quite deliberately. It certainly worked on me.
I think we're still getting used to him a bit. I don't think he got any service really today. There were a couple of moments maybe where I felt like he could have done a little bit more. There was a pass in the first half where I think it was Mikel Merino actually played him in on the right corner of their box, and he ended up sort of going backwards. And again, this was a really horrible moment for me because Gary Neville spoke out loud what I was thinking.
Oh, honestly,
it's the worst.
It's the worst. As people will know, I've performed live comedy, and there was one reviewer who I hated their reviews. I think they gave me a bad review one time, so I just sort of irrationally hated them.
Yeah,
and then I remember a little while later, I went to see a show, and I was like, "Yeah, it's not a great show that." And I read their review of the show, and I agreed with every word. And it was a sickening, horrible feeling. I was like, my nemesis and I are aligned.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than that.
What's that? You know, the meme, the worst person in the world you know has made a really good point. You know that one? It's just like, okay. Anyway, the point.
Anyway, so he said
something about like, I think I would have liked to have seen Gyokeres just try something there. Just sort of take the defender on a little bit or whatever it was. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I would have liked as well. Just try it. You're a striker. You're not going to get the ball in the box that often. So when it does come to you, maybe I was being harsh in the moment because I needed us to score a goal because I think we were behind at that point. I was like, maybe I'm being a bit harsh. But I did feel like in that moment, he could potentially have done something a little bit more. There was the other one that stood out to me was when Jurrien Timber, again, it was the first half. Got down the right. Might have been late-ish in the first half, when we were actually beginning to play a little bit. He put in this really, really good first-time cross from the right-hand side and it sort of whizzed through the what do they call it? The corridor of uncertainty. And Gyokeres was there, but sort of not there, not on his heels, not gambling that ball was going to come in. So I do think there is an issue. He didn't get a lot of service. It is a very tough game. He's playing against good defenders. Gvardiol and Ruben Diaz are both very, very good central defenders as well. So we have to take that into account. But I think it is just a little bit of both. But on a day like today, when it is as difficult as it is against a team like that, I wouldn't be overly critical of Gyokeres. He's not a guy who's going to make something happen out of nothing himself. He's the kind of guy who needs some kind of service, right? Which is why that moment I just talked about there was a little bit frustrating because it was a little bit of service, not like a great chance, but it was something that I think he could do a little bit better with. If he was that uninvolved or didn't get on the end of things or if he didn't get service against teams that we're supposed to beat, then I'd be a bit more worried.
Here are my two Gyokeres thoughts.
Okay.
That I'm going to share publicly.
On a podcast that you do every week.
Oh, dear. Well, one is more a question, actually. Mm-hmm. But the fact I'm asking the question is kind of loaded and people will know what I think. Do you think when he is fit, Kai Havertz will get back into this team?
Yeah, I think if Kai Havertz is fit, he starts this game.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I do. Based on what I've seen so far, I don't think Kai's too worried right now. That's my view. I think he'll get back in, especially for these big games.
That's what I also think, but I also don't think that's a bad thing.
No, that's not.
It's not a bad thing at all, and not a criticism of Gyokeres.
And my other Gyokeres thought, which again, it's not really a criticism of Gyokeres, but like all summer. And, whether this was just the reporting or whether this was the reality, it was like, Gyokeres Sesko. Mm-hmm. And on that basis, right, there's no contest currently. Like, Sesko, bless him, looks miles off it.
He's trying his best.
He's trying his best. He took the 50th penalty in a shootout for Manchester United against Grimsby Town. Like, I mean, Arsenal, on the basis of that being the debate, in terms of this season, Arsenal absolutely got it right. The one that, like, I keep coming back to and being like, I'm sort of like, was Ekitike in that conversation? Like, in terms of like a style and a fit, I'm sort of watching him at Liverpool and I'm thinking, like, if the question was Sesko against Gyokeres, were we asking the right question? I don't know.
You're the transfer guy.
I'm the reporter, yeah.
You're the
I've got to say,
reporter.
I don't know anything about Arsenal ever being seriously in for Ekitike. And I'm not... I mean, maybe it's just he's in a good run of form and Isak's going to get the place and we'll never hear from him again. I don't know. But watching him again the other night, the other day, was it? Scored for Liverpool again, didn't he? I just sort of thought, he feels like more of a fit in some ways. But listen, Gyokeres has got 3 goals. For all this, I think he's the second top goal scorer in the league. What is he? Let's have a look. Yeah. He's joint second.
PremierLeague.com stats.
Granted, Haaland's got double, but...
He's got double of everyone.
He's got double of everyone. He's on flames. But yeah, there's a few on 3. Ekitike, Semenyo, Richarlison, Isidore.
Jadon Anthony of Burnley.
Jadon Anthony. I forgot Jadon Anthony.
Yeah.
And Gyokeres. So, it's not like he's not produced anything.
Esteemed company.
It's his esteemed company. And he will score goals. He is going to get goals. But yeah, I don't know. Just a thought I've been having.
Listen, there's no thought police here. You're allowed to think whatever you want. What about this question from...
Thanks, man. I'm sure people won't come back to me about it if I turn out to be wrong.
What about this one? We touched on it a little bit earlier. Simon, who's at hantsravens.bsky.social. Gyokeres to smash Port Vale this week or rest him?
Rest him, please.
I think
I understand. A couple of people asked this, and there was sort of this idea of well, if he scores 17 against Port Vale, you know what I mean? He'll carry that form back into the Premier League. But he's playing a lot of minutes, and you can see Arteta's been protecting him, right? He took him off after, an hour, 70 minutes in each of the last 2 games with this City game in mind. There's a big burden on him. I would definitely rest him. What about you?
I would rest him too, yeah. There's a big game against Newcastle. I think we need to see, on Wednesday, Kepa, Mosquera, Nkapie, if he's fit, Ben White get back in the team, Christian Norgard, Miles Lewis-Skelly,
yeah.
Ethan Nwaneri. I think Gabriel Martinelli should be starting. I think Max Dowman might start a game, which would be very interesting. I think Trossard could start. So, there's ways that Mikel Arteta needs to shuffle his pack. We've got a very difficult game against Newcastle coming up at the weekend. So rest as much as possible.
I wonder if because Max wasn't involved today, obviously, and played for the 21s yesterday, scored a brilliant goal as well. His under-21 debut, I think, because first season he's eligible to play for them, becomes the youngest under-21 goal scorer for Arsenal as well. But I do wonder if, maybe that decision was made of look, go and get yourself an hour.
Yeah, some minutes.
You might well be in with a chance to play on Wednesday.
Yeah. What about this question? Here's a question. It comes from Master Johnbury. He says it's a slightly morbid question.
Okay.
But Tim Lewis stepping down or being replaced, I don't know what the right terminology is exactly. Hello, Tim. It got me thinking about Arsenal's succession planning at its highest levels. And this is the morbid part of the question. He said, Stan Kroenke is 78 years old and won't be around forever. What will happen to the club when he inevitably passes on? Will UK estate tax law require him to sell the club rather than pass it to Josh? I know you're not a tax or estate lawyer. You don't deal with probate or anything like that.
Certainly
So
not,
let's circle it back around to Tim Lewis stepping down and the changes being made at board level and your sort of broad thoughts on what's happened.
I find it interesting because I'm sort of super engaged, I guess, right? I find the kind of politics around the club fascinating. But your average fan, I don't know how much. What sort of traffic did it do on Arseblog News, Andrew? as compared to like us being spuriously linked with like a 17-year-old Romanian or something,
or a shirt number post. They're always the ones that get the most numbers. Like a player has changed shirt number. I don't know. I'll look it up while you're talking.
Okay, I think it's surprising to many because Tim Lewis has been a really integral figure at Arsenal right up until the moment he left the club. Like, he was heavily involved in the summer transfer window. He's worked very closely with Mikel Arteta, with Andrea Berta. He was a key part of the recruitment process for Andrea Berta. Big ally to those guys, big advocate for them, support for them. He's worked with Stan Kroenke for 2 decades, advising him on his purchase of Arsenal. So I think it would be fair to describe it as a bit of a shock to many. You know, he was the executive vice chair, and a lot of people perceived him as the guy who ran the club. He was kind of the Kroenke's proxy in some respects. And so, yeah, I think it's a big surprise. I think I welcome the boardroom changes. I think that's a good development and an exciting development. I think, there could, I'm a little bit surprised there's not a role for Tim on that board. Who knows really what has gone on there. But I think Arsenal for a long time now have had a board which has been, I'm trying to think of a polite way to say it. Well, at the older age of the spectrum, I mean, Tim was certainly one of the younger board members at 62, right? You've got Josh, but Stan is in his 70s. You've got
Lord Harris.
Lord Harris. I was thinking, who's the carpet man? Lord Harris.
Come on down to Lord Harris's Carpet Emporium.
And listen, Stan and Lord Harris are across everything, and they've certainly been a positive influence. But this is a club that is moving into a new era, a new business landscape, a new financial landscape, a new media landscape. And I think it's good to have some fresh blood in the boardroom. People who are well versed in facing those sorts of challenges. And by the way, to have a woman back on the board, I think is really important. And so I'm really curious to see how it plays out. As for why Tim is no longer there, I can only assume that that Arsenal wanted to make this change. The owners wanted to make this change and felt it was the right time to refresh the boardroom. And maybe they see his time at the club as kind of his chapter at the club as being closed. Maybe they think a job well done, but we're moving on. Because there's no doubt that Tim did a lot of good during his time at Arsenal. And, he came onto the board in the midst of the pandemic and helped steer the club through a very difficult and precarious time. Was involved in the kind of redundancy process and financial review, the removal of Raul
stadium
refinancing of the stadium debt, which I don't think you can underestimate the impact that's had on Arsenal's capacity to spend money and not have to hold cash reserves. And the club as a business and as a football team have become more competitive and performed better during those 5 years. So I think he deserves his flowers and he deserves credit. But equally, I think it's exciting to see some change. And I think that this does feel to me like, while Stan is still very much involved, I do feel like this board feels a little bit reshaped, maybe around Josh Kroenke a bit more.
I think that's probably right. Josh phoned Stan and said he's trying his best.
Well, listen.
No.
Tim,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Tim's a very, trusted aide to
Of
Stan
course,
Kroenke.
I know that. I
sure
just
it
couldn't
would have been
resist
a
the gag.
difficult-
Couldn't resist.
I know. I'm sure it would have been a difficult decision to make these changes, but whoever, whether they were of Tim's own volition or not. But I think, as the question poses, the reality is that Stan is 78 years old. He's doing less international travel. As informed and authoritative and across things as he may continue to be, the future owner of Arsenal is Josh Kroenke.
Is this where I drop in the Succession theme tune now? Is that it? I mean, I do think there's something quite interesting about the profile of some of the people that are involved in the new board, the new shake-up. There's a guy who's very, very big on property development and real estate, and there are continued rumours about Arsenal and a stadium expansion. Yeah. And
he was very involved in SoFi as well, from what I understand, the building. And
and
so that's interesting.
Yeah, the Arsenal statement said, the group will bring diverse experience and knowledge from finance, sport, retail, property development, media, and entertainment to support the club going forward. And there's a sort of non-executive appointment as well, Ben Winston, who is a TV film producer. And I think that one is really interesting because I wonder what clubs are thinking about how the media landscape is going to shift over the next 5-10 years, right? Where now you need a Sky subscription or a TNT Sports subscription or whatever. And I think we've already seen, people like Amazon dip their toes into the Premier League rights market. And I wonder if in, years down the line, a few years down the line, the whole media landscape will be changed and shifted. And there might be a bit more onus on clubs themselves to produce not the coverage, but the content around games and things like that. So bringing somebody like Ben Winston on board who's got all that experience of production and who understands the industry and the broadcasting TV industry, that kind of stuff. I thought that was the one that sort of stood out to me a little bit more.
Yeah,
than
me
the
too.
others.
I mean, I guess we're quite media minded, aren't we? So I know of Ben Winston as well. I know of full well his production company. He is actually a legitimate match-going Arsenal fan.
Yeah,
as well,
long-time season ticket holder. So this is not, he's not some just random dude.
No, so that's always good. We want that representation on the board. I don't know how familiar, some of the kind of KSE team are with the club and its culture. But I mean, look, I think that one's fascinating. I totally agree. Arsenal have got nearly 5 million YouTube subscribers to sort of put, give you some sense of the reach of the club. I mean, I do think you look at the success of sort of the all or nothing thing that Arsenal did, and so much of sport now is about the content creation outside of the game and the match rights too.
And how you control that.
Yeah, and steer that and own it.
Yeah.
Right? And Arsenal have massive potential in that respect, as we know, because we are producing Arsenal-related content.
Sure.
So we know the reach and we know the power of the club. So I'm genuinely sort of like intrigued to see the changes this will bring, and obviously it's going to be long term. Yeah, I'm not anticipating anything imminent or immediate, but.
Well, I mean, there was a great question in the press conference the other day. I think it was Tom Canton from Football London asked Mikel Arteta, in the time you've been here, there have been quite a lot of executive changes. And he rattled through a list of names. At one point, I thought he was never going to stop. There were that many. So
he's still there.
He's still there. To this day, he's doing his best.
Yeah.
But, he's still there. There have been quite a lot of boardroom changes and executive changes. So, maybe we'll see more. Yeah, I guess.
And I think, we welcome our new American overlords, I guess.
They're not that new, are they?
No. Well, this is it.
Yeah.
And it's KSC's club, right? They are the owners, and I feel like some of these moves are about connecting up that KSC, what they call the KSC family.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, look, one of the big criticisms and complaints over the years was that there wasn't visibility, there wasn't presence. You remember Stan Kroenke turning up to an AGM and just sitting there and not saying anything. Or, whatever he did say was cursory. And I think you have to say that Josh is far more involved and far more present and far more visible. And, is at the Women's Champions League final
today.
Yeah.
I think I'm right in saying he's only missed one of Arsenal's Premier League games so far this season. Now, I'm not saying I expect that to continue.
Sure.
But he has been on the ground. He has been in London, in Europe, a lot in this early period of the season. And I think that can only be a good thing.
Correct. There will be a point where he's got to look after the Kalamazoo whirly gigs or whatever. But anyway,
another beloved part of the KSC.
The KSC family. We're all connected. Unless you have something else, I think we should get this.
No, I'm just looking forward to sort of Mikel Arteta posing for photos with the head coach of the Kalamazoo whirly gigs. Them leading a seminar together. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's all there. It'll be part of the YouTube content that we offer.
Yeah, that's true. Ben Winston's eyes light up.
Hey, we want associate producer roles on that, Ben Winston. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
that's what comes up.
We want our 5%.
Created by.
Yeah, exactly. Based on an idea in a podcast by.
All right, listen, we'll leave it there. We'll get this podcast out to everybody. You can join us a bit later in the week. Obviously, we'll talk about the EFL Cup game in an Arsecast later in the week. Tomorrow, we'll have an episode of The 30, looking back at all the other Premier League football this weekend. Myself and Phil will bring that to you tomorrow afternoon over on Patreon, patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, though, take it easy, folks, and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.